She accidentally sends her baby's ultrasound to the wrong number, only to have the ruthless vampire king appear at her door, claiming, "That child is mine." Now a human woman carrying a half-vampire heir is dragged into his dark world, where ancient laws, bloodthirsty enemies, and a dangerously possessive king demand she become his queen or lose her baby forever. If you had told her a single wrong digit would change her life, she would have laughed and put the phone back in her pocket. But the night she sent her baby's ultrasound to a stranger, the reply that came back did not sound like any human she had ever met. Elena sat in the dim hospital corridor, the paper gown scratching her skin, the smell of antiseptic mixing with the faint sweetness of baby lotion from the maternity ward. Her hand shook as she held the glossy black and white photo the nurse had just handed her. A tiny shape floated in a gray universe, its heartbeat still echoing in her ears like a fragile drum. She was 24, alone and terrified, but when she looked at that shape, her fear softened into something fierce and protective. That little blur was the only thing in her life that felt purely, stubbornly good. She snapped a picture of the ultrasound with her phone, intending to send it to her best friend, Nita, with some brave-sounding caption like, "Meet the only person who hasn't left me." Her thumb moved on autopilot, tapping the first name that popped up from muscle memory, the one she hadn't deleted even though she told herself she would. Luca Sparkles, the man who had disappeared the day she told him she was late. The man with the impossible silver eyes and the strange, old-fashioned way of speaking that she had tried so hard to forget. Her heart pinched but stubbornness won. She changed her mind and quickly typed Nita's name instead, hit send, and forced a smile at the screen as the photo flew off. A second later, the smile vanished. She stared at the tiny text above the picture, "Delivered to Luca Sparkles." Elena's stomach dropped, one digit off. She had accidentally tapped his name before correcting to Nita S, but in her trembling, she hadn't noticed she'd sent it twice, once to each of them. Now her baby's first picture was on its way to the man who had left her in the silence of a blocked number and unanswered calls. She tried to calm herself as she stepped out of the hospital into the cool night air. The sky above the parking lot was a deep blue bowl, the full moon hanging like a watchful eye. Cars hummed by on the main road, headlights sliding across her like ghostly fingers. She hugged her thin jacket around her, walking faster, the ultrasound photo pressed tight against her chest. It didn't matter if he saw it, she told herself. He was gone. People who chose to be ghosts couldn't hurt you anymore. Her phone vibrated. She stopped beneath a flickering street lamp and unlocked the screen, expecting a voice note from Nita screaming in delight. Instead, a single new message glowed from an unknown number, one she didn't recognize but whose name she somehow felt more than saw. "Where did you get this?" The words were simple, but something in them, something in the spacing and the quiet force behind them, made the hairs at the back of her neck stand up. The profile picture was empty, no name, just a number with a foreign country code she didn't recognize. Elena swallowed, her breath puffing out in a small cloud in the cold air. She typed back quickly, fingers stumbling. "Sorry, wrong number, please delete it." Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, like whoever was on the other end was thinking too carefully about every word. "This is not a wrong number, Elena." Her own name on the screen turned her blood to ice. She had not sent her name, she had not saved this number. For a long second, the sounds of the city dimmed. She could hear only the echo of the baby's heartbeat in her memory speeding up. She typed, "Who is this?" then deleted it, typed again, "Do I know you?" deleted that too. Finally, she forced herself to hit call instead. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, it connected with a soft click. The voice that answered was low and steady, like velvet stretched over steel. "You should not be walking alone this late. The wind carries fear tonight." Elena froze in the shadow of the street lamp. "Who are you?" she whispered. "How do you know my name?" There was a pause. In that silence, she could almost hear something else on the line, like distant wings brushing the air, like the rustle of old pages turning in a forgotten library. "You sent me a picture," the voice said at last, "of a child who should not exist, of a heartbeat that does not belong to your world alone." Anger flared through her fear. She clutched the phone harder. "Listen, I don't know who you are, but that is my baby, mine, and I don't appreciate you talking about it like some mistake." On the other end, the man exhaled softly, the sound carrying a kind of tired sadness, not irritation. "You are braver than you think," he murmured. "You speak like someone who has been abandoned and chose love anyway. I respect that." She blinked, thrown off balance. No scammer talked like this. No normal stranger replied to an ultrasound with poetry and prophecy. She considered hanging up, but something about his voice held her there, like warm hands hovering just close enough to catch her if she slipped. In a dark room miles away, the vampire king stood at a tall arched window, one hand wrapped around an ancient stone pillar. Moonlight spilled over his pale skin, tracing the sharp lines of his face and glinting in eyes that looked silver from a distance but held complicated shades up close, sorrow, discipline, and a tenderness he allowed almost no one to see. The phone rested against his ear, but his gaze was fixed on the city below, on the rivers of human light that curled like veins through the sleeping streets. On the table behind him lay a single printed copy of the ultrasound image, already delivered by an invisible courier that moved faster than mortal sight. The tiny form in the center glowed faintly under his touch, the ink shimmering as if it remembered light from another world. He had ruled the night for more than 500 years, sworn to keep his kind hidden to avoid the one thing older than his kingdom, the prophecy of a child who would unite warm blood and cold moonlight. He had not expected that prophecy to arrive as a blurry picture on his private phone. "I am not your enemy, Alina," he said quietly. His voice softened, no longer the king who commanded, but the boy he once had been, who knew what it meant to lose everything. "But that child you carry, he is not only yours. His heartbeat echoes in two worlds. In mine, we have been listening for it for centuries." Alina leaned against a cold brick wall, the ultrasound photo crushed in her palm, knuckles white. "Two worlds," she repeated, almost laughing despite herself. "What are you, some kind of cult leader?" The faintest hint of amusement warmed his tone. "If I were, I would try to convince you to follow me without question. Instead, I will tell you this: do not trust anyone who suddenly appears in your life after tonight. Not even old friends, not even family. People do strange things when they think power is near." Her throat tightened. "Power? I'm a cashier at a supermarket. I eat instant noodles for dinner. The only power I have is the off button on my alarm clock." "And yet," he replied, "the child whose image you sent me carries my blood, my lineage, my mistake perhaps, or my second chance." The words hit her so hard she had to slide down the wall until she was sitting on the damp concrete. A passing car honked, someone laughed in the distance, a dog barked. The ordinary world kept moving, unaware that hers had just torn down the middle. "Your blood," she whispered. Her free hand went instinctively to her belly, still small but undeniably there. "Are you saying you know who the father is?" For the first time, the voice on the phone hesitated. "The man you knew as Luca," he said slowly, "was a mask I wore to walk beneath your sun, a foolish little rebellion against an eternity of rules. I thought I could pretend to be human for a few weeks, taste your world, then vanish without consequence. I was wrong." She remembered their first meeting, the way he had appeared in the cafe like a shadow stepping out of a dream, his eyes catching the light in a way she had never seen. The way he had listened when she talked about her mother's illness, about her fears, about how small and forgettable she felt. The way he had always seemed a little cold to the touch, no matter how warm the room was. The small, unexplainable things she had forced herself to ignore because he made her feel seen. Every puzzle piece she had shoved into a dark mental drawer suddenly slid into place. "Luca," she breathed, "what are you?" In his chamber, the vampire king closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of all the things that word had meant to humans over the centuries: monster, demon, nightmare. He thought of the children he had secretly protected, the wars he had stopped before they began, the hungry young vampires he had taught to feed without cruelty. He had never wanted to be a monster. He had simply been given teeth and an endless night and told, "Survive." "I am the reason you have been warned about the dark since you were a child," he said. "I am what your stories call a vampire, and I am the king of those stories. My name in my own world is Kael." The word vampire should have sent Alina running, but instead she felt a strange calm spread through her, the kind that comes not from safety but from finally understanding the size of the danger. Fear, yes, but also clarity. If this was a joke, it was the most elaborate one she had ever heard. If it wasn't, then pretending the world was normal would not save her. "Okay," she said slowly, surprising herself with how steady she sounded. "Let's say I believe you. What do you want from me, from my baby?" Silence hummed between them, deep and careful. "First," Kael said, his voice now carrying a weight that could move armies, "I want to make sure you are safe. There are others who will feel his heartbeat the way I did, who will not see a child, only a weapon. They will come, I cannot allow that." "And second," she asked. The king looked again at the ultrasound on his table. He reached out and traced the outline of the tiny form, stopping just where the faint shape of a hand seemed to curl into a fist. For centuries he had watched humans live bright, short lives while he moved like a shadow at their edges. He had told himself distance was kindness, that to love them would only mean watching them die. But here, in this blurry printout, was proof that the line between his world and theirs was no longer as sharp as he had believed. "Second," he said, and there was something raw in his voice now, something almost vulnerable, "I want to know the child I never thought I could have. To give him what I never had, a father who doesn't run when things become difficult." Alina's eyes stung. She thought of the night she had told Luca she might be pregnant, how he had gone so still as if listening to something far away, then whispered, "If this is true, I will bring danger to your door," before vanishing from her life like mist. "You already ran once," she said bitterly. "Why should I trust you not to do it again?" Kael did not flinch from the question. "You should not trust my words," he replied. "You should watch my actions, starting now." Wind rushed suddenly in Elena's ear, so loud she pulled the phone back to check if the line had gone bad, but the call was still connected, the signal strong. The street lamp above her flickered once, twice, then blew out, plunging her into darkness lit only by the cold silver of the moon. Her heart hammered. "What did you just do?" "I am closer than you think," Kael said softly. "Look to your left." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something steadier, something that had grown in her since the day she saw two lines on a test, held her in place. She turned her head. At the far end of the alley where it opened onto the main street, a tall figure stepped out of the shadows as if the darkness itself had decided to take shape. He wore a dark coat that moved like liquid around him, and his hair was the same pale silver she remembered from those summer nights, catching the moonlight and throwing it back brighter. His eyes found her instantly, glowing not red, not monstrous, but a soft, luminous gray that held a depth that was almost tired. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the concrete, but the call stayed connected, his voice now echoing both in the air and from the small speaker at her feet. "I told you I would not run this time," the Vampire King said, his gaze dropping briefly to her rounded belly with something like reverence. He took one slow, careful step toward her, then another, as if giving her all the time in the world to choose whether to stay or flee. "Elena, that child is mine, and if I do nothing, every monster who ever feared my throne will come for you both." He stopped just out of reach, hands open, empty, the night holding its breath around them. "So," he asked quietly, a plea hidden inside the question, "will you let a monster protect you?" Most people think they would scream and run if a monster stepped out of the dark. The truth is, when life has already broken you in quiet ways, sometimes the scariest thing is not the monster, it's the choice he puts in your hands. Elena stood in the alley, back against the cold brick, one hand over her belly, the other hanging uselessly at her side. The Vampire King, her Luca, but not really, waited just a few steps away, tall and unreal in the moonlight. His coat barely moved in the wind, like the air itself didn't dare touch him. Yet his eyes, those strange silver eyes, were not cruel. They were searching her face the way a drowning man searches for a shore. "You ask if I'll let a monster protect me," she said finally, her voice low and rough. "But you don't get to decide if you're a monster. The people you hurt do." His expression tightened, the words striking deeper than she realized. Slowly, Kael lowered himself to one knee so he was closer to her eye level, a king kneeling in a dirty alley. He kept his hands where she could see them, palms open, empty. "Then let the person I hurt speak," he answered softly, "and I will listen." The simple humility of that shook her almost more than his confession of being a vampire. Monsters in stories demanded, threatened. This one was asking for a verdict. "You left," Elena whispered. The memory burned more than the cold air. "You held me like I was something precious, and when I needed you most, you vanished. Do you know what it's like to hear a second heartbeat inside you and realize you're the only one who's going to fight for it?" His jaw flexed. "I left because I knew what my world would do if it sensed you, if it sensed him." His gaze dipped to her stomach, then rose again, pained. "I thought distance would keep you invisible. I miscalculated the strength of our blood. Instead of hiding the danger, I only left you to face it alone. For that, there is no excuse." Something in the way he said "alone" made her chest tighten. He knew that feeling too well. She could hear it in his voice, like a long, empty hallway behind every word. She whispered, "You keep saying him. How do you even know it's a boy?" Kael's mouth curved in the faintest smile, not playful but wonderstruck. "His heartbeat carries a pattern I recognize. It's stubborn, refuses to slow even when you're afraid. That is very much a son." For one fragile second, warmth washed through her. The idea that someone could know her baby so intimately already, not through a machine but through something deeper, made her feel less alone than she had in months. Then headlights swept across the alley mouth, sharp and white. Kael's head snapped toward the street. The warmth vanished, replaced by a tension that made the shadows seem to lean in closer. "Stay very still," he murmured. A black SUV rolled slowly past, then stopped right at the corner. The engine stayed on, low and restless. The windows were dark, too dark. Elena heard doors open, then the soft, synchronized thud of 3 sets of boots striking pavement. Her heart leaped. "Police," she whispered hopefully. Kael listened, his head slightly tilted, as if hearing something she couldn't. "Not police," he said. "Their hearts are too calm, their steps are too measured. These are men who expect to hunt, not help." Cold prickled along her arms. Hunters like in your world. Hunters from yours, he answered. Humans who know just enough about mine to be dangerous and not enough to be wise. Flashlights cut through the dark at the alley entrance, beams sliding across dumpsters and brick. One of them paused on the spot where she had dropped her phone. It still lay there, screen glowing faintly. They were close, too close. Fear surged up, hot and wild, but Elena pressed her back harder into the wall and swallowed it down. Fear wouldn't protect her child. Decisions would. Kael looked back at her, voice low and urgent now but still gentle. You have a choice, Elena. If you tell me to leave, I will vanish. I will try to draw them away and I will watch from the shadows as long as I can, but they will not stop once they know he exists. He took a slow breath, like what he was about to say cost him something. If you let me protect you, I will take you somewhere they cannot easily follow. My territory, my laws, you will not be my prisoner, you will be my guest. Free to hate me, to question me, to leave when it is safe, but you will live, he will live. The flashlight beam crept closer. One of the men spoke into a radio, his voice clipped. Signal was last tracked here, she has to be close. Elena's legs trembled. Her old life flashed through her mind in pieces. The tiny apartment that always smelled like coffee and laundry soap, Nita's loud laugh, the corner store clerk who saved her the cheapest cereal. It was a simple, struggling life, but it was hers. Now the universe was asking her to trade that familiar hardness for a different kind of unknown. A vampire king, a hidden world, a prophecy she had never asked to be part of. Her hand moved instinctively over her belly again. Under her palm, she felt not a kick, but a quiet steadying, almost like the baby was listening, waiting to see what she would choose. The thought brought a strange calm. She looked Kael straight in the eyes. If I go with you, she whispered, you don't kill anyone for me, not if there's another way. I won't let my child grow up thinking blood solves everything. A faint light flickered in his gaze, respect maybe or relief. You set the terms, he said. I will follow them as far as my duty allows. Mercy is not weakness, Elena. It is a choice I have wanted to make more often than my crown allowed. The first hunter stepped into the alley, light shining directly on the fallen phone. He bent to pick it up. Elena's voice shook, but her words did not. Then yes, she said, protect us. Something inside Kael seemed to loosen at that single word. He rose smoothly to his feet, the movement fluid but careful, like every shift of his body was being measured so he wouldn't startle her. The night itself felt like it leaned closer to him, waiting for command. May I touch you? He asked. The fact that he still asked, even with danger looming, made something unlock inside her chest. Consent in a moment when he could have simply grabbed her and run. She nodded, do what you have to, just don't drop me. A tiny, almost disbelieving smile flashed over his face. I will not drop you. He stepped into her space and with a gentleness that didn't match his reputation or his strength, gathered her into his arms. His coat brushed her cheek. It smelled faintly of rain on stone and something like old books. His skin was cool but not icy, more like the surface of water at night. The hunter straightened up at the end of the alley, holding her phone, his flashlight sweeping forward. Now, Kael whispered. The world tilted. It felt to Elena like someone had pulled the ground sideways, like she was falling not down but through. Cold rushed over her, not painful, more like jumping into a lake you hadn't realized was that deep. For a heartbeat, she could see nothing, only streaks of light and shadow screaming past. Then it was over. They stood on a rooftop, the city sprawled beneath them like a sea of stars. The alley, the SUV, the hunters, they were all far below, out of sight. Wind whipped her hair around her face, sharp and cold, but the sky felt wider up here, the danger a little smaller. Elena clung to Kael's coat, panting. Warn me next time, she managed. He loosened his hold at once, letting her find her balance, but he didn't step too far in case she swayed. You remained conscious, he said, a hint of admiration in his tone. Most humans faint their first time. Great, she muttered, add that to my resume. Cashier part-time, survives vampire teleportation without passing out. To her surprise, he laughed, quiet, startled, like he hadn't done it in a long time. The sound made him seem a little less like a legend and a little more like a man burdened by too many of them. He slipped off his coat and draped it over her shoulders without asking, making sure it didn't press too hard against her stomach. Under the moonlight without the coat, he looked younger somehow, as if time couldn't decide how old to make him. Stay still, he said softly. I want to make sure he is well. He knelt again, this time in front of her, and leaned in, but not too close, his face near her belly. He shut his eyes, listening. The city noise faded around them, leaving only their breathing and the distant hum of traffic. After a moment, a gentle smile touched his lips, the kind that comes from relief more than joy. His heartbeat is strong, Kael murmured. When the hunters approached, it raced. When you chose, it steadied. He trusts you already. Elena's throat tightened. No one had ever described her like that, someone others could trust. She had always been the one people left, not the one they leaned on. The idea that this tiny life already believed in her made her feel both heavier and lighter at the same time. Then I can't afford to be scared, she said quietly, not in front of him. You are allowed to be scared, Kael replied. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it. Tonight you have shown more courage than many warriors I have known. He rose to stand beside her, giving her a respectful distance while still placing himself between her and the edge of the roof. Lights twinkled far below. Somewhere sirens wailed, a reminder that the human world kept spinning, unaware of the war quietly waking around it. For a small, strange moment, the rooftop felt peaceful. The moon painted everything in silver, the wind cooled the sweat on her neck. Elena realized that despite everything, she felt safer than she had in months. Not because the danger was gone, but because, for the first time, she wasn't the only one carrying it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She froze. They found it, she whispered. It was on the ground, remember, how is it? Kael held up a hand, not to silence her, but to focus. They almost certainly checked it, but I moved us faster than they could lock onto your new location. For now, this is our advantage, not theirs. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the phone out. The screen showed 3 new messages from Nita. The first was normal enough. Girl, I just saw the ultrasound. Why didn't you call me? I'm coming over, don't you dare ignore me. Elena swallowed. She had forgotten the message had gone to her friend too. Guilt twisted in her chest. She should have been with Nita, eating ice cream and crying happy tears on the sofa, not standing on a rooftop with a vampire king. The second message made the hair on her arms stand up. Why did you send that picture to HIM? Elena frowned. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. She hadn't told Nita anything about Luca being back. She hadn't told her he was anything but a heartless ex. How could Nita know? Before she could respond, a third message arrived, and this one turned her bones to ice. It was a photo. Her apartment living room, taken from the inside, curtains half drawn, her worn gray couch, the small lamp with the crooked shade, the baby name list scribbled on a notepad on the coffee table. Someone was standing in her home, right now, taking pictures. Under the image, one short line. Come home, Elena, we need to talk about your son. Her breath caught on the last word. Son, no one but Kael should have known the baby's gender. Not yet, not even the doctor had confirmed it. The phone slipped a little in her grip. How do they know it's a son? She whispered. Kael stepped closer, his calm cracking at the edges as he read the screen over her shoulder. His eyes darkened, the moonlight reflecting in them like steel pulled from a sheath. Because, he said quietly, each word heavy with realization, someone on my side or yours has already betrayed him. The wind rose around them, whipping her hair across her face, as if the night itself recoiled from what that meant. And on the screen, the photo of her living room glowed patiently, waiting for a decision that would change everything again. Most betrayals people imagine as knives in the dark, but the cruelest ones arrive as text messages from people you love, written in a voice that doesn't sound like them at all. Elena stared at the photo of her own living room, her thumb trembling over the screen. The lamp, the crooked shade, the blanket she and Nita had fought over a dozen times, it was all there. Familiar, safe, and somehow now invaded. The message beneath the picture stared back at her. Come home, Elena, we need to talk about your son. My son, she whispered, tasting the words like they were made of glass. They're already talking like he belongs to them. Beside her, Kael studied the image with a stillness that was its own kind of violence. The rooftop wind tugged at his shirt, city lights reflected in his eyes, turning them into twin storms. Look here, he said quietly, zooming in the window. At first, she saw nothing. Then, in the thin strip of black glass between the curtains, she caught a distorted reflection, a pale shape almost human, but the outline of the shoulders was too sharp, the posture too perfect. More chilling than the figure itself was what rested near its hand, a faint smear of red, shaped like a circle with a line through it, drawn on the glass. What is that? She asked. His jaw clenched, a warding mark, old magic, bastardized by humans who think symbols can control what they don't understand. It keeps most of my kind from entering that space uninvited. Whoever did this has been planning. You mean they expected you, she said slowly. They knew you would come for us. He gave one small, grim nod. Or they knew I would try not to. If I step into that room the wrong way, I could be trapped. But if I stay away, they can force you to come to them. He met her eyes. They are using your love against you. The truth of that cut deeper than fear. Nita's laughing face flickered in her mind, the way she had held Elena's hand through doctor visits, how she'd scrubbed mold out of the apartment bathroom without being asked. Nita wasn't perfect, but she was loyal. If someone was in her home, sending messages from her phone, Nita was either a prisoner or worse. I have to go, Elena said, voice breaking. She's there, alone, because of me. If I hadn't sent that stupid picture. Kael stepped in front of her, not blocking her but grounding her. No, he said gently, because someone greedy decided your child's life was currency. You did nothing wrong by being proud of him. It doesn't matter why, she shot back, anger rising to fight the panic. If I don't go and something happens to her, I'll never forgive myself. He studied her face for a long moment. There was no royal command now, no cold calculation, only a quiet weighing of her pain against the danger he clearly saw more clearly than she did. You would walk into a trap to save a friend, he said softly, even knowing you carry more than your own life. I wouldn't walk in blind, she answered, lifting her chin. I have you now, don't I? King of the night, or whatever your official title is, use it. A wry spark lit his gaze. The official title is longer and less flattering, but yes, you have me. He stepped back, decisions settling over him like armor. Then we do this on our terms, we go to your apartment, we get your friend, and we learn who is moving pieces on this board. His voice lowered. But hear me, Elena, if at any moment I tell you to close your eyes or turn away, you must trust me. Not because I am king, but because I would rather bear your nightmares than see you carry them. Her chest tightened. No one had ever said something like that to her. Most people in her life had been willing to let her carry everything, bills, grief, uncertainty, because she was strong enough to handle it. Strong in their mouths had meant you can suffer quietly so we don't have to. Fine, she said, words rough but sincere. But the same goes for you. If there's another way besides hurting someone, we take it. I don't want my son born into a war of revenge. He held her gaze for a beat, then inclined his head not as a king but as a man honoring a promise. Agreed. They moved. This time, Kael warned her. I will not jump us as far, he said. The marks around your home may react to my full passage. We travel in steps. He took her hand instead of lifting her, letting her feel the choice in every contact. The world blurred, not as violently as before, but like pages turning quickly in a book. One rooftop, then another. A quiet church tower, its bell dark and silent. The metal skeleton of a billboard humming with leftover daylight heat. Between each jump, the city changed shape beneath them. From up here, Elena saw it with new eyes. The pattern of streets like veins, the strip of river catching moonlight like liquid glass, the clusters of windows that glowed warm with ordinary human lives. She thought of all the people below, sleeping or arguing or watching late-night shows, unaware that two worlds were brushing shoulders over their heads. You see why I stayed away, Kael said softly at one pause, following her gaze. Your world is beautiful when it doesn't know we're here. I did not want my shadows crossing your light. She glanced at him. You talk like you're made of nothing but darkness, she said. But you're the one who keeps asking how to do this without hurting people. Real monsters don't stop to check their footprints. A small, startled silence followed. Then he said, almost to himself, no one has spoken to me like this in a very long time. Like what? She asked. Like I have a choice in what I am. Their eyes met. For a moment, the king and the single mother, the ancient and the terrified, stood on equal ground. Then the night shifted again, and they were only a few blocks from her building. From this rooftop, Elena could see the narrow street where she lived, the row of tired brick houses pressed close together, each with its own story. A single dark vehicle sat 2 buildings down from hers, too clean for the neighborhood, glinting under the streetlight like a waiting insect. Kael's eyes narrowed. Same type of car as before, he murmured. They moved faster than I expected. Your friend's message was bait and status report. He tilted his head, listening. Elena forced herself to be still to let him work. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying bits of conversation that meant nothing to her, distant laughter, a dog's bark, a radio somewhere. Then she heard it, faint but firm, floating up through an open window. I already told you she's at work, Nita's voice snapped. Pregnant or not, some of us still have to pay rent. Elena's knees almost gave out with relief. She grabbed the low wall of the rooftop. She's alive, she whispered. She's arguing, that's a good sign, right? Kael's shoulders eased just a fraction. Your friend has courage, he said. Listen. Another voice answered from inside the apartment, male, smooth, but edged with impatience. You underestimate how much we know, Ms. Nita. We intercepted the image. We tracked the signal. Someone in this building is carrying something valuable. Elena swallowed hard. They're talking about my baby like he's a piece of stolen jewelry. People who fear what they don't understand always reduce it to an object, Kael replied quietly. It feels safer to hurt a thing than a person. The man continued, his tone mock gentle. We don't want to harm your friend or the child. We want to make sure he ends up where he belongs, with those who understand his potential. Yeah, Nita shot back. Funny, because forcing your way into a broke girl's apartment with your fancy boots and creepy smiles is exactly the understanding vibe. Elena covered her mouth to keep a broken laugh from escaping. Even scared, Nita was pure Nita. Kael closed his eyes, focusing again. There are 3 hearts inside, he murmured. Your friend, the man speaking, and someone quieter, watching. Their rhythm is wrong for a human. His eyes opened, colder now. One of mine. Elena's stomach lurched. So the betrayal is from your side. Perhaps, he said, or perhaps someone of my kind who never accepted my rule. Old enemies are always looking for new prophecies to twist. He glanced at her belly briefly. You and he are not prizes, you are responsibilities. Not everyone with fangs shares that belief. She wrapped Kael's coat tighter around her. So what now? I walk in and pretend I don't know what's going on, that I just happened to come home. If you walk in, they will lock the door behind you, he said. Emotion makes humans predictable, they are counting on that. He paced a slow line along the rooftop edge, thinking, then looked back at her. I go first. Through the shadowed spaces their symbols did not cover. I get close enough to neutralize the threat from my side. You stay out of sight, close enough to hear, far enough to run if I fail. The word fail from his mouth chilled her more than the wind. And Nita, she pressed, what if they hurt her while you're sneaking around? His gaze didn't flinch. I will not allow that. You can't promise. I can, he interrupted, but his voice stayed gentle. Because for the first time in a very long time, this is not about my throne or my laws. It is about a woman who sat alone in a hospital hallway and still found the heart to fight for someone she hadn't met yet. Someone who trusts you enough to steady his heartbeat when danger comes. Anyone who threatens that deserves my full attention. Heat burned behind her eyes. You talk like that and then wonder why I'm confused about you being a monster. A hint of a smile touched his mouth. Stay confused a while longer, it keeps us both honest. He turned toward the building edge, their apartment level just a small jump away. The distance looked far to her, but not to him. She grabbed his sleeve. Wait. He stopped instantly, giving her his full attention. If you get in there and something goes wrong, she said, swallowing hard, and you have to choose between my friend and us, choose her. I'll find another way to protect my baby. For a moment, raw shock flashed across his face, quickly covered by anger, not at her, but at the choice she was even considering. Do not ask me to calculate like that, he said, voice low. A true king does not divide lives into worth more and worth less. Your friend's courage matters, your child's future matters, your life matters. I will not bargain one for the other. I will look for the third path. The third path, she repeated skeptically. You sound very wise and dramatic when you say that. Experience is just the name we give to our long list of mistakes, he replied dryly. Trust that I've had enough to know there is almost always another way if we're patient enough to see it. She let go of his sleeve slowly. Fine, third path, just come back. He held her gaze for a heartbeat longer than necessary. I will. And then he stepped off the roof. Her breath caught, but instead of falling, he slipped into the shadows cast by the adjacent building, his form thinning, bending, melting into darkness. It was like watching smoke pour under a door. One moment he was there, solid and sharp. The next, he was part of the night itself, threading down the side of the building toward her lit window. Elena crouched behind a vent, heart pounding, forcing herself to breathe quietly. Below, somewhere behind brick and glass, Nita was arguing with men who thought her baby was a resource. Kael was sliding through angles of shadow that her mind couldn't quite hold, each second stretching longer than the last. Through the open window, voices floated up clearer now. So, the smooth man said, impatient, when she comes home, what will you do, Ms. Nita? Call her and say, hey, Elena, there are some very nice strangers in suits who want to examine your womb. Actually, Nita snapped back. I was going to say, hey, Elena, bring a lawyer and a flamethrower. Elena almost smiled through the fear. Then came a third voice, one she hadn't heard before, soft, silvery, with an old accent that made every word glide. No need for hostility, the newcomer said. We will not wait for her, she is already on her way. Elena stiffened. How do they know? She whispered. As if in answer, the soft voice continued, "Our king is sentimental. He will not leave the mother of his heir in danger when there is a chance to be noble." Kael was always like that, even before he forgot where he came from. The breath left her lungs. Inside her apartment, a chair scraped. Nita's tone changed, sharp with fear. "Wait, how do you know his name?" And on the rooftop, looking down into the mouth of her own home, Elena realized with a cold, sinking certainty that the person waiting inside wasn't just any vampire. It was someone who knew the vampire king well enough to speak about his heart like an old wound. From the shadows below, as if carried on the same wind, came Kael's voice at last, low and filled with a fury he had so far kept carefully leashed. "Hello, brother," he said from inside her living room. Elena's fingers dug into the concrete at her knees. "Brother." She wasn't walking into a simple rescue at all. She was walking into a family war.